Hey everyone, welcome to the Entry Point Hunting Podcast. Justina Lee Stoltz here with my co-host.
Drew Vincent.
And today we are super excited to have our guest Dan on the show. Dan started his obsession with hunting and shooting at the age of 8 in the fields of southern Alberta, as you do. And he quickly developed a passion and interest in precision shooting and was lucky enough to build a solid foundation of marksmanship skills that has taken him all over the world hunting and competing in long-range precision shooting events. He still has the same passion today, and his hunting style stems from this precision rifle background. He loves teaching these techniques to enhance the skills of other passionate hunters and shooters, and we are super excited to have him on the show today to answer all the questions that everyone has ever had about how the heck you become a better and more precise shooter. So without further ado, let's welcome Dan to the show. Ta-da!
Thank you, Justina, for that. That was excellent.
Perfect. So, Dan, maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on what an 8-year-old is doing shooting guns out in the fields of Alberta. How did that happen, and how did you get to that point?
I'm not sure exactly where it started. I think it started with a Crossman air rifle when I was somewhere around that age, 8, 7 or 8, something like that. And just, small game hunting, having a bit of fun out in the fields. We lived on the edge of a small town, so rural sort of environment. And yeah, I just developed a passion for seeing how far I could hit things accurately. And that developed into 22s and some other centerfire chamberings as well too. But it always sort of had that background of how far can I accurately get this round on target? How can I use that to my advantage when it comes to hunting, not just sort of ring steel as well, and become a more effective, efficient, and ethical hunter. And that's sort of, I guess, where it started. I was pretty lucky as a kid. My parents would send me to these sort of firearms training camps on weekends, just sort of weekend type camps, and I got the chance to develop some fundamentals and some good habits pretty early, and that sort of just developed bit by bit. And I never really lost that passion. I sort of lived in Australia for a lot of years of my life, and had some fun out there doing the same sort of thing, and back here now, and the passion never really ends. It's like you said, that's pretty much wrapped it up.
So when you first started, what would you have considered a long shot? And then how quickly did that progress?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I guess, with the good old pump Crossman air rifle, 100 yards is probably pretty far. There was many a gopher that was feared the air rifle back in the day. So that was probably about 100 yards was where I'd be pushing it with those little 177 pellets. But before I knew what I was doing with the 22 long rifle side of things, just with an old Cooey, back in the day when you're young, I think 200 yards was starting to push it for that. You jump into some centerfire chamberings, and a 223 600 yards is pretty far, and get into the 6.5 Creedmoor, and 1,500 yards is pretty far, and it goes up from there. So yeah, I think as you go up and play with different toys, that your definition of long range definitely increases.
What's the longest that you shoot now?
Accurately and repeatably that's a different question. I think about a mile is what we usually sort of bang at these days for the ELR type stuff we play around with. The precision competitions that I do, the PRS style competitions, that's between 8 and 1,200 or so yards. So
wow.
And what's the Wild West long shot, the one that you've tried to take and maybe once or twice hit it?
Yeah, just over a mile, I'd say, is probably about as far as I've ever got.
Wow.
And that you get there, but it's at the end of the 6.5 Creedmoor, basically. So it's coming down like a rock at that point.
Well, and like, how many considerations are there when you're shooting at that kind of range? Well, I mean, I guess long range shooting in general, if we're at 100 yards, it's pretty limited for what most people are shooting and starting to shoot. When you start getting long range, what are the different variables that you're having to take into account?
Yeah, great question. There are lots, and you have to reach a point in basically what you're trying to achieve where you stop going down the rabbit hole, or you just cut off your variables. So you can get all the way into Coriolis effect, spin drift, vertical jump, things like that. But generally speaking, your drop data for your particular round, which is true to your particular round in your rifle setup, that's super important. The biggest consideration is wind, obviously, being able to read the wind. Knowing wind is most of long range shooting. And yeah, I think temperature, humidity, density, altitude are the three biggest besides wind and your drop data.
That's a lot of things to be trying to think about when you're, not to mention like your body position and where your rifle is and how it's like supported up against your body and all of those other, minor details, let alone the rotation of the earth and the wind and the density of the air.
Yeah, for sure. The fundamentals of marksmanship is probably what I'm going to get into a little bit later. And that's a lot of what you're saying there with the body and exactly what you're doing and the habits, the muscle memory that you've built over years. That should be sort of more or less automatic. But when it comes to variables that can change, it's mostly wind, drop data, and your environmentals as far as DA and temperature and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a good thing to differentiate. There's controllable factors, which is all of the fundamentals of marksmanship, which you said, we will talk about. And then all of the uncontrollable variables, which are the things that you just mentioned as well, as far as wind and all that kind of stuff.
True. Yeah. Especially wind. And how that relates to hunting as well too. We're not taking shots at 12, 1,500 yards at an animal, but some people do push it a little bit farther. And the more solid your fundamentals are, the more comfortable you are with your rifle system and confident you are, the farther you can ethically push those type of shots. And for me, I've put a limit on myself of 500 yards in good conditions. Some people will push that well past 800-900 yards, depending, but it's kind of individual and depends a lot on your fundamentals.
Yeah. That was going to be a question that I asked, is what is in your mind an ethical distance to shoot at? And you just said for you, it's 500. And some people will push further than that. I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Like even not shooting at an animal, like shooting at a target. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. Past 200 is stretching things.
It's a very personal thing, and it should be. It should have a lot to do with how confident you are, your physical system, your mental game, things like that. It's a very personal thing, but yeah, you have to be careful, and you have to spend a bit of time to do it right, because ethically being able to take an animal ethically is super important to me.
Yeah.
Well, it's amazing. Like the range gets real busy 3 days before hunting season opens, where everybody trying to just and like I was gone. I lived out of country for a couple of years, and then coming back and getting back into shooting, and embarrassingly being like, man, like you don't realize how much drops off. It seems pretty simple, and I think to non-hunters, that's always the big thing. There's almost like a mocking of people that maybe don't get hunting with like, point the gun, pull the trigger, and it's like find the animal, get a good sight on it, make sure it's good, get a good shot, and then all the work afterwards. But there's a lot to shooting a gun, and even though we get the best equipment, it's insane. And what would you put to someone that's maybe even like new into shooting? What would you put as the priority things to maybe start off?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about. Up to hunting season, the range gets super busy. People are taking their 3 shots a year kind of thing. And that's important. But
I actually met a guy at the range the other day who's like, yep, don't shoot my gun except for right before hunting season. 3 shots, make sure it's still straight. And away we go.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
There's a lot of that. In my mind as well, too, you can be a great hunter, and finding animals is a huge part of it. But if your tool, if your weapon is a rifle, you need to be able to use it. You need to be able to be super confident with it. And no matter how good of a hunter you are, you need to be a good marksman as well too.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have those fundamentals of marksmanship. And I think that's really important. I think it makes you a better hunter at the end of the day, a more ethical hunter and a more successful hunter too. So I guess to answer your question, as far as those sort of fundamentals, I guess is what you're getting at, is I think there's break into 3 categories. Stable position is a big one. Breathing and trigger control, and I sort of have a lot of subcategories for there. But what you should really sort of focus on, I guess, when you first get into it, and you're just practicing, and you should practice a lot. You should shoot more than 3 rounds a year. You should get behind your rifle
What?
and you should practice, because there's nothing replaces trigger time. But basically, I think you'd want to start, if you're just getting into this, you want to really focus on your prone position. Now, that's the most stable position you can shoot a rifle from.
Laying down. For those of you who have
yeah.
no idea what prone is, laying
Correct.
down.
On your belly, bipod in a rear bag. So this is how you prove loads for your rifle. This is how you do load development. It's how you choose and verify factory ammo. It's how you zero your rifle. Get on your stomach, bipod and rear bag. You can do it on a bench as well too. It's pretty good, stable if you have a bipod and rear bag. That is. I tend not to do that, just because that's not how I shoot in the field. It's not how I shoot in competition. It's I want to practice verifying my data, verifying my rifle, how I'm going to use it. So that's pretty important to me. But there's nothing wrong with a bench as well too. But yeah, I guess you're prone, you're at a bench. I think the number one thing that you really need to work on is being square to your target. So a lot of people, when they're prone, and I'm going to sort of refer to that mostly than behind the bench. Sometimes you're a little limited behind the bench, depending on how the cutout of the bench is. But as far as prone goes, being square to your target is super important. So your rifle, your shoulders, hips, knees, everything should be square. You should have your legs splayed, but you should be very square to your target. You see a lot of people that are sort of have an angle cocked like that to the side, and it doesn't help you as far as the line of the recoil mitigation needs to be coming straight back. So being square is number one. And one of the most important things I'm going to talk about today is the importance of cheek weld, getting your face on your rifle. And that leads a little bit into rifle setup too, which I think I'll touch on a bit later. But having the cheek, your cheek riser on your rifle attached to your face exactly the same way, exactly the same pressure every single time. So you should be square. Your rifle should be sitting sort of collarbone. This is another sort of point here. A lot of people assume that out in the pocket here, or sitting on your shoulder, on your delt there, is where normal rifle butts go. But if you really want to sort of get square, you have no choice but to bring that rifle stock right in over your collarbone. It allows you to drop your face straight onto the comb,
which we've discovered, thanks to Dan taking me out and correcting all of my bad things that I was doing up until now, correcting them so that I can develop new good habits. Yeah, I was not square before, and my face doesn't fit my rifle. The butt on my rifle is not the right shape for my face. So I need to make some corrective purchases to fix that.
That's true. Yeah. And it is super important. It's you buy a rifle off the shelf. It may or may not fit you. Everybody is a little bit different. Every rifle is a little bit different. There are things you can do. Having adjustability in your rifle is super awesome. If you have that, most sort of standard stocked rifles don't have a lot of adjustability. But as far as length of pull, maybe we'll get into that first. Maybe that's sort of a prerequisite for some of these fundamentals. So as far as rifle setup, the things that are super duper key is the length of pull, which is just the distance between where you're going to shoulder your rifle and basically your trigger shoe. So there's ways of measuring it, things like that. Bigger people need longer, shorter people less. And I like to sort of hook the butt of my rifle in the sort of between on the other side of my elbow here, and just measure to your index finger where you're going to place your finger on the trigger. You need that to be, here to there.
This distance.
Trigger should be about on your first joint and first knuckle. That's where your trigger sort of should end up when you're sort of sticking in the crotch of your arm like that. So if you can get that pretty close, it's super helpful. The even more important than that, like we were saying, is the cheek height. So that's where a lot of rifles sort of fall over. You just get a standard stocked rifle. It may or may not fit. You have the Monte Carlo sort of rise that can help. If you have an adjustable cheek pad, that's great. That's super helpful. But the point being is when you drop your face down behind your rifle, and your scope height as well too is kind of what rings you have kind of dictates that a little bit. You can
And
get away
level.
with
Apparently, when your scope's on
Yeah.
an angle like this, it's not so bueno.
scope level. That's super important as well. But yeah, as far as getting your face dropping, and that has to have a bit of pressure. You have to not be hovering. That's the thing a lot of people do, is sort of hover their cheek. They're using their neck muscles to hold their head up to get a sight picture, and that's not repeatable. So basically, things have to be repeatable 100% of the time. Every single time you have to be doing the same thing. That's where accuracy comes from, is repeatability. So yeah, be able to have it your cheek height just correct. You can get strap-on pads, things like that. You can sometimes, some military guys will just take little bits of foam and just tape the butt of the rifle up until they get it just right. But it has to be able to drop the weight of your head onto that stock and just hook it right under your cheekbone. So you got bone connection here. There's no squishy bits going on. There's there's a little bit, obviously, but it's bone connection. The weight of your head is sitting onto your stock, and that gives you perfect sight picture. So that's super critical. That's probably the second most, or maybe even the first most important thing when it comes to repeatable accuracy. That sort of relays into your as far as your scope setup goes, your eye relief. So that's a setup of the scope. Every scope's a little bit different, sliding it forward and back in your rings at max magnification to get the right picture. You're not getting shadow, that sort of black shadow that comes in if you're left, right, up, down, forward, or back. Left, right, up and down, that's your cheek height. Left, right is your is how your sort of face interfaces with your stock. Forward and back is a measure of your scope sliding forward and back in the ring. So that has to be right. So basically, you're just and this is kind of all what you'd call natural point of aim. So you shoulder your rifle, or you get behind it, it comes in collarbone at the same point, your face drops on it at the same point. You could close your eyes, you could open them, and you have a perfect sight picture. It's a natural point of aim. That just becomes natural. You do that thousands and thousands of times. It just is there. You don't have to worry about that.
And it takes time to set that up. Like when we did my rifle, we probably spent like an hour and a half, like moving the scope around and making sure that it all worked with my eye. And it's different for each person's eye. The scope, the person, the gun, everything is different. So it takes time. It's not something you just like whip out in 5 minutes and then you're ready to go at the range. Like it's something that takes some time to do.
Yeah, you should definitely take a bit of time to do that. The other thing that we did, Justine, as well, too, as you remember, is your diopter adjustment. This is the fast focus on the end of your ocular, and that's completely unique to every single person's eyes, a little bit different, and that's to allow your eye to work less hard when we're looking through a scope. So your parallax in your scope is your focus, your side focus. You obviously need that pretty close, but
have you done this, Drew?
I'm sitting here being like, it's a good thing I didn't get a shot on anything. I've benched and everything. I'm like, it's the you don't know what you don't know, and
I know.
Justine and I ran into each other at the archery range one day, and we're sitting, and then I went back in and did some lessons with the guy, and same thing. Like it was like I was a pretty consistent shot. But I spent time with him, and it was like, oh, like I didn't even get out of grade 1 here, and I'm listening to this, being like, I'm slamming notes out, and there's just so much information that it's, and I don't know if anyone that I know knew any of this stuff. You buy a gun, you go, you figure out how to get it so that your eye sees the thing, and
it's not black around the outside.
Like, yeah, about there, and then you just tried to repeatedly shoot that, and I'm like, this is good information.
Yeah. It's critical, especially that last piece about the diopter thing.
Your ocular
that thing is so hard to figure out because and Dan had said this to me when we were trying to do it on mine. Your eye is this incredible work of magic that will just correct for what it sees. So you have to like close and open your eye 800 bajillion times to try and figure out where are that little crosshair the clearest without your eye correcting for it, because your eye will automatically make it clear every single time after like 1 second of your eyes being open.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely right. So it just means that your eyes working super hard, you're going to get fatigued. So just quickly to be able to do that, I can jump into more detail or less depending here. But as far as what you're trying to do is the focus of your reticle. So you don't want to be looking at anything through your scope. So blank sky, a blank wall that's well lit, basically. Don't worry about what you're looking through. You're just focusing on the reticle, and that fast focus eyepiece in the back there, the one closest to you. You basically have to close your eye after you've got a good cheek weld. You close your eye and you just give it a couple seconds to rest. Open your eye, and the very first thing that you notice about the clarity of the reticle, and you play with your diopter, which is like a set of glasses for your particular eye. It's going to be different for everyone. And you get it so that when you open your eye after a little rest period, it's crystal clear. Your eye's not working. It's not trying to compensate, because you might not notice it if you have a what you're looking at through your scope is blur or is complicated. You totally don't notice it. Your eye just instantly compensates, and it's working a lot harder than it has to. So you spend a bit of time looking through glass, you'll really appreciate that, and it helps too with the combination of that allows your parallax on your scope to be super efficient and to act like a focus knob. You don't have your diopter set right, your parallax isn't going to work well, and you're going to have different planes going on as you move your eye around in your scope. That introduces issues with accuracy.
Exhausted eyeballs. That's what you're going to have. Exhausted eyeballs and not a clear shot.
That too, yeah. But over distance as well too. When you don't have your parallax set right and or your diopter set right, that introduces issues when it comes to accuracy. So super important.
That's just all like the fundamentals of setting yourself. You haven't even got to shoot a bullet yet.
Yeah,
you're not even at the range. You're still in somebody's basement, like playing with little tools to try and get everything to work.
Yeah. That and having your scope level.
Yeah,
that's the other sort of issue there. Having your scope level. So that's sort of the basic sort of rifle setup.
It's so interesting because I think that the prep work for hunting, when I first got in, I can't speak for everyone, is the thing that's so easy to completely ignore. You're like, I don't know, I got it. It shoots straight. I'm consistent when I'm shooting out of a sled, and then you go out and you spend the time, and then looking for animals, and that's a whole other topic. But but yeah, I think you're saying things, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have no like the parallax. I've noticed that. I'm like, I don't know, what's it even like? Is it's there, and so it's really interesting to hear all of this.
Yeah, it's like the fine tuning of your rifle to you, so that when you do go sit on a bench or you do go lay prone out in a field, you can actually get the absolute maximum accuracy and precision out of your rifle because it's completely attuned to you. Like you might be able to shoot decently straight and okay and like hit your 4 or 5 inch grouping every time at 100 or 200 yards. But if you want to do what Dan showed me pictures of, put bullets through the same hole at 100 and 200 yards, like you can totally fine tune your shooting setup to be custom to you.
Yep. Very, very important. Yeah. Your rifle has to fit you. You can't make yourself fit around your rifle. It's never going to work. It's never going to be repeatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's super important. Rifle setup. I think we use that as a bit of a preempt to a lot of the sort of shooting fundamentals per se. So that's important. And I think we're just in stable position, being square. That's where it's sort of laid into that, just dropping your head down. You're not cocking your head, leaning onto a cheek weld that's not right for you. You're not hovering, you're not using your neck muscles to do that. Because another sort of overlaying concept, I guess, is that your rifle and your body is a system, and people sort of forget that a lot of the time. You need to be in tune with each other, almost like a tuning fork. If you're gripping your bag really hard with your left hand, you're using your forearm muscles, and that's introducing difference in when your shot breaks compared to if you weren't, holding your head up on hovering around trying to find your sight picture. That's using neck and back muscles. It's not repeatable. it has to be, you have to be in tune. So I think being square is a big one. The cheek weld, that's a natural point of aim. Sort of covered that. The next and probably the most important aspect of breaking a good shot is trigger control. And this is where a lot of people sort of, yeah.
We discovered I have 0 trigger control when we first started out at the field the other day.
Yeah. So it's one of my instructors once said to me that the trigger is the steering wheel of your rifle system. So you can steer it left, right, or up or down, basically with how you do it, and it needs to be repeatable. So I was lucky enough to sort of develop some of these skills and I guess habits right the first time. I know a lot of guys that I shoot with competitively that have had a lifetime of trying to unlearn bad habits. And
this is why I'm so thankful that we're doing this now, because all of the 1 year or less than a years of experience of shooting or hunting or whatever that I have is even enough time to develop bad habits and to have a habit of just completely letting my trigger finger do whatever it wants after I pull the trigger, which is really, really hard to correct and do something that's repeatable when you've just done nothing consciously for the entire time that you've been doing something.
Yeah. And again, like you don't know that you should or shouldn't be doing something, right? So
Yeah.
it's easy to make these habits. They're absolutely overcomable. You can train that out. That's not a problem. And practice, dry fire practice is a huge thing. I do a lot of dry fire practice in my living room.
I have a question. I always in my less than a year, heard that like dry fire was not so great for your gun. Is that true or false? True or false?
Big can of worms here. I am quite firmly on the camp that dry fire is fine, absolutely fine. So there are a few caveats, but it's generally speaking, any rifle that is newer than 40 years old is not going to have a problem, and any centerfire rifle is completely fine. So back in the day, old school rimfire rifles, let's say made in the 50s or 60s or so, it was not a good idea to dry fire them. Your firing pin would contact the edge of the chamber and you'd start to peen that. It wasn't a great idea. So today, modern rimfire rifles, even my rimfire competition rifle, I dry fire all the time. It's not a problem. There are stops in your firing pin. It doesn't allow it to contact the side of your chamber. Centerfire rifles. I've
been like counting the shots and like giving my girlfriend crap because I'm like, no, like that was the last. And like I thought, like, rimfires, I knew centerfires, or I believed centerfires weren't a big deal, but like rimfires, same thing. It's like, nope, you're gonna break the firing pin. It's just done.
So yeah, it's
with a hammer.
You'll get a lot of guys, probably even modern guys, that will argue with me about this, and I get a lot of that. All modern rimfires do have firing pin stops. So the 1022, any of the bolt actions, they do have a stop. Now, if you were to sit there and do it 10,000 times, you're eventually probably, depending on the quality of that pin stop, whether it's a roll pin or built into your firing pin itself, things can happen. I don't worry about it for myself personally. It's you sort of, mileage may vary. You might want to do a bit of research on your particular rifle. Same goes with center fire. The firing pin drops into dead space. There's a huge shoulder on the firing pin that contacts the inside of the bolt face. You're not going to run into any issues there. And again, if you have a poor, really crappy quality rifle, let's say, or there were some manufacturing defects in it, you might get unlucky. I've heard it happen. So it can happen. I'm not saying it'll never, ever happen, but I believe...
Caveat, Dan does not guarantee that you won't wreck your shit.
Won't fix everything. So having said that, I really believe in the value of dry fire practice. It's hugely valuable. It teaches you a lot without the concussion of a round going off. It teaches you a lot about how your body reacts, and it gives you practice that you can do in your basement. Mm-hmm. It's super valuable. I do, I don't know how many hundreds of rounds of dry fire practice every week, probably lots. So
okay,
that's super important, I think.
Well, I mean, being able to do that dry fire practice, because it is like, I mean, if I'm shooting 270, 30-06, A, I'm having to go to the range. And B, you're getting blasted every time. You don't want to be putting a ton down. So, I
Yeah.
picked up snap caps and things that I helped. But if I'm able to go and just repeatedly put, a bunch of practice pulls on it, that makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
Absolutely, yeah. And nothing wrong with snap caps. They're great. You can get them for rim fire as well too. They don't last very long with rim fire because you're hammering the side of that rim. It's a piece of plastic. Center fire snap caps are great. I use them sometimes too because it allows you to run the full bolt, get the whole feeling of rounds going out the side and new ones coming in. So yeah, if you're at all worried about the quality of your firing pin or your bolt or whatever, run a bunch of snap caps. That's fantastic. You don't even have to run it out. You can grab one, just lift your bolt, put it back down, cocks your rifle, it stays in the chamber. It's super good that way. So don't be afraid of dry fire. That's what I say.
Okay.
But
This podcast has already paid dividends for me. All right.
yeah, no, so that's super good. But as far as trigger control, let's get into that because that's really what you're doing here. That's how you're interfacing with your rifle system to send a round down range. And the first thing that you want to, I guess, get right is where the trigger blade contacts your trigger finger. And a lot of people will hook the trigger finger into the first joint, first knuckle on your trigger finger. It should be halfway in between that and the tip. So right in the meaty part of the pad on the first joint of your finger, right there. So you don't want to have that hooked along in your joint. So
no Captain Hooks.
Yep, correct. So you want to be pulling straight back. And while you're pulling straight back, you don't want to be jerking it. Obviously, everybody knows that. You don't sort of slam your trigger down. But the way I sort of learned and kind of helped me a lot is to practice and pretend that I'm ready. I'm, got my sight picture. I'm exactly where I want to fire. We'll get into breathing just a little bit later, but you're ready to fire, and you have a couple seconds here. You're just applying constant slow pressure to your trigger, and it's going to more or less surprise you. You're going to know if you know your rifle after a while. You pretty much know when it's going to go off because of how much pressure you're feeding it. But you're pretending that you're drawing a line in the dirt, let's say with your index finger, and you're just very, very slowly applying pressure and drawing the line in the dirt if it was on a vertical plane or whatever until it breaks. And you're not going to know when it breaks. You're going to know roundabout, but it's going to surprise you a little bit. And it should. That's kind of how you get around anticipation and flinching. It's easy if you're shooting a magnum caliber to develop a flinch. Super easy. And the way around it, dry fire, because you'll start to know, and you'll start to be able to tell when you flinch and why, when you don't have that massive concussion going off. So
I was definitely a flincher.
Yeah,
Definitely a flincher. Not so much now with my 308, but when I shoot handguns, oh man, I flinch like a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like every single time. And it's bad because I'm never paying attention to when the chamber is empty and it just like stays open and the gun's done and you're done with your mag.
And then you pull it
then
again.
I pull and I'm like, oh! And then my buddy's always like, oh, I saw you flinched. I'm like, no, don't look at me.
You know the way around a good sort of drill as well too when it comes to pistols like that. Get your friend, if he reloads it all, get a magazine with 2 or 3 dummy rounds in it, and you don't know where they are.
Yeah.
And you can do the exact same thing. So you're not expecting, if you're counting or whatever, you're not expecting which one it is, and you'll see, and it'll show you. Video yourself. You see how you do that. That'll teach you a lot. So yeah, fishing is natural. Guns are super loud, a lot louder than people think they are, really.
Yeah.
And it just comes with repetition and practice.
I think
I still even do it to some degree. So
yeah, and I think 2 things that probably make people flinch, or at least 2 of the things that I think made me flinch. One was sound at first. It doesn't bother me so much anymore, but like it is loud, and if you don't have proper ear protection on, it can be painfully loud. And then 2, recoil. Everyone anticipates recoil. And something that Dan had talked to me about and other people have said as well is you should be one with your gun. Like there shouldn't be a looseness to the way that you're holding. Like you get recoil when you're not holding your gun tight to your collarbone into your chest. And man, the day that Dan and I went out and like fixed my gun and me, mostly me, man, I had like the biggest bruise on my collarbone because for probably the first 5 or 6 rounds that I let out of my gun, I was just like slamming into me and out. And then when I went to the range last weekend, I held on to that thing for dear life and held it tight so that I was just one unit and no recoil, no bruising, no flinching. And that makes a big difference is holding your gun tight like it's actually a piece of you.
Yep. They call that driving the rifle. So definitely no space between you and the rifle.
You'll be proud of this. An old man at the range came over and said, "You shoulder that gun better than I could." And I was like, "Oh, Dan would be so proud of me."
There you go. Yeah, that's awesome. That's super good to hear.
And I wanted to say to him, "It's not supposed to go in your shoulder, buddy. That's why." No.
Yeah.
Shoulder's a wide section.
It's a natural spot to put it a lot of time. And offhand shooting, it is a bit more natural when you are offhand kind of thing. Just put in that outer pocket and it's sort of a natural putt, but it just forces you to have to drop your head to the side to do what you want to do. And you really don't need to do that. So yeah, that's super important.
Okay, back to trigger control. Sorry, I keep side railing it.
So yeah, it basically just constant pressure, even pressure until it breaks. And the most important thing after that is your follow through. And this is where a lot of people sort of fall over is holding that pressure, whatever pressure you're feeding it until it breaks. You need to hold that same amount of pressure for a good 2 count. Give yourself a good 2 seconds. So a lot of people assume the bullet's left the barrel. What does it matter? And it's kind of the exact same concept as the follow through on a golf swing. There's actually a lot of parallels between precision shooting and golf, funnily enough. And you're trying to take a small object and put it way down there exactly where you want it. Follow through on a swing is just as important. So you don't just hack away at a golf ball and toss your club kind of thing. You don't let your finger off until you at least, like I used to give myself a good 1-2, 2 second count kind of thing. And I still do that. Same with semi-autos as well too. You don't let that trigger reset for a good 2 seconds. You'll hear that click. Give yourself a full 2 seconds. So
absolutely critical. Like we could literally see on the paper when I was shooting and we were like setting all my stuff up, which shots I had not held my finger down afterwards. There was no follow through and the shots were all over the place. And as soon as I was like, okay, don't let go, don't let go, don't let go, and holding on, all of a sudden the accuracy is just so much better.
Yeah. If you go back to that sort of analogy of the trigger being the steering wheel of your rifle system, you have the ability to steer that left or right. If you're pulling back and you're pulling to the right, it's gonna influence your shot. It's gonna pull it one way or the other. So same thing, like if you're just pulling straight back, and you should be pulling straight back, try to really keep that 90 degrees. As it breaks, you keep that same pressure. And if you drop it all of a sudden, you're going to introduce vibrations and harmonics in your whole system. That's going to make a difference. It absolutely does. So and Ken, like Justine said, I know tons of people that do this. They'll sort of, as they're training this out of themselves or training it for the first time, they'll do a group of 5. The first 3 they'll remember, the last 2 they won't, and there'll be 2 little groups. There'll be one up, dead center, it'll be one up and to the right or whatever like that. So it is that important. It's something you really have to practice, and repetition's your friend there. It's gonna take a little while. If you're a pistol shooter, if you started on pistols, let's say, or semi-autos maybe, and you're just used to sort of jamming that and releasing really quickly, it's going to take a while. But as far as precision rifle shooting, it's very important.
Yeah, trigger control for sure the whole way. It's interesting because for me, like you don't know what you don't know, and if you've never grown up shooting guns or whatever, you don't know not to slap the trigger or not to like completely jerk off your finger afterwards and let it do whatever. So those are learned behaviors that I think are super critical to stuff for somebody to tell you. when you start shooting things, don't slap the trigger and like pull super hard with the crook of your finger. Gentle until it surprises you, and then follow through. Don't let go.
Yep.
And those are things that you just don't know unless somebody tells you not to do those things.
Yep. Super true. Yeah. It's, you wouldn't know that really. It's not a natural thing if you were just to walk up to a gun for your very first time. No one's ever said that to you. It's just, it is that important though. It's one of those things.
I'm really looking forward to that, the next range day here, to like, there's just so much more intentionality that comes with this, as opposed to like,
Totally.
It was good today, it was not as good. I didn't know all the ways that I could bring it in. And it was, some days it was way better. And then others didn't, and just so many variables to try and zero in on.
So much more than like, I put the crosshairs on the target and I pulled the trigger, and like, this one day was great shooting, next day was shitty shooting, and like you can totally hone that in so that every day is pretty damn good when you're out at the range.
Yeah, you start to learn all the variables. Shooting is about eliminating variables, whether it's in your body or in your rifle system or how you load or whatever, let's say. But you start to with practice know which variables make a difference to you, which you need to work on the most. It becomes pretty apparent if you just spend a bit of time, shoot a bit of paper, just categorize exactly what you're doing from day to day, and you'll start to learn, what you're doing, what you need to work on. So super important. I think the last sort of bit of this, as far as fundamentals goes, is breathing. And it's fairly important. I wouldn't say it's the most important, but it comes into play a lot in how it relates to hunting as well too. I'll get into, but you have a bit more going on when you're in a stressful situation, when you're under time stress, or when you only have a few seconds to get a shot off at an animal. Let's say breathing is getting control of it. I'm not really going to talk about getting control of it, let's say, because that's personal. Sometimes you might have just ran up a hill and you're just panting like crazy
because you're super out of shape and you should run more hills.
I'm very offended right now. I feel personally attacked.
Yeah, or just say, like, you got a bit of buck fever going on. It does happen. So you'll have a natural cadence. You want to try to sort of control your cadence if you can. But as far as when let's say you're laying down or you're ready to take that shot, you will be breathing. How fast you're breathing is dependent on the situation. But what you want to do is try to saturate your blood with as much oxygen as you can, given the situation. So like large, deep breaths from your diaphragm. If you can, try to calm yourself down and saturate your blood with as much oxygen as you can, because that's going to slow your heart and slow your breathing cadence as well too, which are both beneficial. And you're going to basically, depending on time, pick. I'll sort of do that for a few seconds, and then when I know I need to get ready, I'll take 2 deep breaths. As I'll breathe in and out as deep as I can. And I will, on the last exhale, I'll just pause about halfway. So you'll exhale about halfway and you'll just hold. And that's when as you start to hold, that's when you're going to start feeding pressure into your trigger. So you don't have a lot of time, depending on how much oxygen you already have in your bloodstream. You might start needing more pretty quick, but that hold is when your body's just going to calm down. Everything's going to stop moving. Your heart's moving as least as possible, as little as possible. And you have that little window of a few seconds there, sort of feed pressure, and you should be able to break it before you need to take another breath. So
it's incredible how much that pause changes things. Like even when I went shooting this past weekend as well, and just remembering that, to like pause just for a second, it's like you get so much variability from your breath in like your up, down, or side to side, or like just everything's moving all the time, even though you look perfectly still while you're sitting at the bench. And then you pause for a second and it's like, oof, everything comes
just stops moving. Yeah. What you'll notice as well too, when you get good at this and when you are fairly calm, is that when you're breathing and you have your natural wobble zone in your scope, let's say, and you get that nice pause and everything comes and stops, you'll start to notice your heart, and you can watch in the reticle, basically, you can watch your heartbeat. and just you want to get really technical. You can start to time it between your heartbeats as well too. But I don't really worry about that for general purpose. I just worry about just calming yourself and just that little pause there at the midway of that last breath. It makes a difference.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think at the end of this I'll give you a heads up to prepare it, but if we can have that like checklist of things, of just kind of the flyby on what we've talked about, because it's been so good. I know, like I'm pretty much sure that you're doing your own loading, and I think maybe we'll save that for another episode, because that's a couple episodes in itself.
Could be.
But off the shelf ammo selection, and I've heard before, is that ammo working well with your gun and things like that? Can you maybe talk to that a bit?
Sure. So
this is a great question, because I literally asked Dan this question like 3 days ago when I was trying to figure out why my 22 doesn't shoot straight anymore.
Yeah.
With all the 6 different types of ammo that I put through it.
Yeah. So when it comes to factory ammo, there are so many different offerings, so many different grain weights, powder charges, different bullets, and things like that. And when it comes to your average rifle and factory ammo, it's about validating and testing, because you can basically get, let's say, 3 different types of ammo. Your rifle may not like any of those. It's about just going until you find one that your rifle likes. And no 2 rifles are going to be the same. Not even 2 rifles off the same production line sometimes would be the same. Every barrel is just a little bit different. So way you might want to approach that would be to pick a grain weight that you're happy with, and pick a bullet construction that you're happy with. So let's say you want monolithic copper bullets, or let's say you want a bonded bullet or whatever, a higher BC bullet, let's say. So pick a bullet that you're happy with.
Can I pause for higher BC, and maybe if we can...
Yeah, what does that mean, Dan?
Yeah, so
I just need a I'm stupid sign where it's just like...
Yeah.
No.
Help.
No, I'll definitely back up anytime. Ballistic coefficient is basically the numerical number assigned to a particular projectile to give it a reference point for how efficiently it cuts through the air. So it's in reference to a standard, a G1 or a G7 BC standard, and it relates to, comparatively to that standard, how well or how not well does this bullet pass through the air. So a higher BC will always mean that it's a more efficient bullet cutting through the air. But the most efficient bullets, as far as BC goes, may not be the most efficient for as far as terminal velocity goes, or terminal performance. So you want to balance that. You want to, let's say you need to have a copper bullet. It may not be the highest BC. Like the ones I hunt with for my big game rifle are monolithic. I'm sort of trying that out, and it's not the highest BC bullet by any means. Like most bonded target bullets are a lot higher. So you have to sort of balance it like that. And when it comes to the performance you want from the bullet and the efficiency you want from the bullet, and pick something in the middle there. As far as the weight of the bullet as well too, if depending on the type of game that you're going to go after, you may want a higher or lower grain weight of bullets. So
okay, so for the average Joe who's like got a rifle that they're trying to figure out what ammo is going to work for them, what do they do?
So you go to your store, local store. Hopefully they got a good selection.
See what's available right now.
See what's available. Yeah.
If anything. Yeah.
And right now, not a lot, but you can order online as well too. If like, let's say for your case, Justina, you have a 308 and you've picked about 150 grain bullet, and you're happy with a bonded type of bullet, or a soft nose, I think is what you're using now. But
I will switch to copper.
Yeah. So there aren't a huge lot of copper offerings right now, full monolithic bullets. A good middle ground is a bonded bullet, like the Nosler AccuBond, or something like that. It holds together, holds its weight really well, does pretty good. You don't get a lot of sort of missing lead in your animal or whatever. But let's say you've chosen that type of bullet and about grain weight. So you go to your store, you buy as many offerings as you can. This sucks; it gets expensive. Um, that you can afford or that have available to you in that weight and style. So let's say it's like 3 or 4 different boxes, and you shoot them. So you shoot them 4 groups on paper from the prone in as little wind as you possibly can and in the best conditions that you possibly can. So taking out all of the variables from yourself and your environment that you possibly can, you shoot them for groups. So your rifle will or won't like one or the other. Like you will noticeably see a difference in your group size comparatively from one brand to the other. And it's just to do with the type of bullet, like the geometry of the bullet. The ogive and the bearing surface of the bullet might be different from one to the other. The BC might be different from one to the other. Charge weight, primer, brass type sometimes makes a difference. So your rifle will just tell you. It'll say, "Look, I don't like these ones. I like these ones."
So when you say that, for people who haven't ever tested ammo, what does that mean? Or I guess maybe I'll just say what I think that means. So my understanding from my conversation with you a few days ago is that when you're looking to figure out what ammo your gun likes, it's what groups the best, right? It's not necessarily you've picked a spot and you're shooting at it and you're hitting it bang on every time. Because unless you sight in your gun to that particular ammo, it's not going to necessarily hit the target or the area that you're aiming for, but rather if you can shoot, say you're aiming for the same spot on the target with 4 different types of ammo and you end up grouping in 4 different areas, your rifle is going to like a particular ammo better when you can see that it's grouping the best, even though you're aiming at the same spot every time.
Correct. I get what you're getting at here. So that's the difference between point of aim and point of impact. And with different ammo types, your point of impact will change. So your point of aim is going to be the same every single time. And actually, when I'm evaluating ammo, doing my load development, I will purposefully click my scope off and to one side so that my point of aim, which is going to be dead center bullseye, is different from the point of impact. And just so I'm not chewing out the point of aim and I'm losing that sort of through my scope or whatever. But when it comes to what you're talking about, each ammo will be a little bit different. So let's say you've determined which one does group the best, then you will use your scope and you will track it in so that your point of aim and your point of impact is the same spot. When you're doing this group evaluation, don't really worry about your point of impact. Where it hits doesn't matter. It's the group size. So
this was critical for me when I was trying to figure out why my 22, which was shooting so beautifully and so nicely when Dan and I had last shot it, suddenly with all these different types of ammo in it was like all over the freaking board. And Dan was like, doesn't matter. Is it grouping? And if it is, then if it's grouping better than the one you had in there, then that's better ammo for your gun.
Yep, absolutely correct. And then you will use your scope to bring your point of aim, point of impact to the same spot.
That's how you test your ammo.
Yeah. So just use
bucket of bullets. They just the fat 1,000-round buckets.
Oh yeah,
they're just not grouping super tight anymore.
Yeah. No, those don't tend to do that. No. When it comes to 22 ammo, you pretty much get what you pay for. It almost, there are variations. My competition rifle really likes the SK line of ammo, and that's by Lapua as well too. But the higher priced Lapua ammo versus what I use actually doesn't get me any better groups. That's kind of an anomaly. Generally, the more you pay for a box of 22 ammo, the better groups you're going to get. And it's about consistency and on the line of how they produce it.
And what's a cost per bullet kind of range for a 22 look like then? I've certainly never bought performance 22 rounds. So
yeah, it can get pretty nuts. So as far as what you get, like let's say CCI standard velocity, what you can get your average Walmart pretty much anywhere. I think that's up to like $13 100 now, roughly.
Yep.
Now you can get into, so what I run SK long range match in my competition 22, and I paid I'm like at $130 for 500 now. So
Oh, I thought you were gonna say for 100, and I was like,
no, it's not quite that bad. I think so. It's like over double. And then you can go about double again when you get into some of the higher Lapuas and Ely matches and things like that. So you can go from about 13, 14 cents a round to getting close to 50 cents a round.
wow.
You do get what you pay for when it comes to that. I mean,
I expect my gun to shoot itself at that point.
yeah. But these sort of ammos through a good barrel, like I can hit 350 yards. I can hit probably an 8-inch plate at 350 yards pretty much every time. Wind aside, let's say, and I'm quarter-inch grouping at 50, and my 200 yards is, almost close to an inch. So
Yeah.
just
Wow.
over an inch or whatever. So
It's impressive.
It makes a difference.
it does make
matter.
a difference. Yeah. Yeah. When you're sort of hunting with these sort of things, like I use my 22 for birds a lot, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've never shot a bird over about 30 yards when it comes to that sort of thing. So CCI standard velocity is my go-to for my hunting 22 ammo.
Yeah.
Cheap, available, works good. But yeah, when it comes to 22s, evaluating them, because you don't reload for 22, it's all about evaluating different ammo. Just get as much as you possibly can, shoot it for groups, use a little ruler or a set of calipers to evaluate your group. 5-round groups, always 5-round groups. And what's the tightest? Consistently shoot 5 rounds of 5 and see what your average is there. Switch it out. Here's a little tidbit as well too. When it comes to 22s, this is sort of centerfire. It does apply as well too, but particularly with 22s, when you're switching ammo types, give it 15 to 20 rounds to foul the barrel with the new type of ammo. So there's going to be a lubrication on the bullet. It's going to be different from maker to maker. You can't just evaluate the next group. You switch ammo and you do a crappy group.
It's critical. I did not know that.
Yeah, it will always be. It'll never be super tight. So give yourself 3 5-round groups, or just sometimes you just shoot it, just get it done kind of thing. If it's not crazy expensive or whatever, but to evaluate the next load, you need to have to foul your barrel. So
it's all nice with 22. When you start getting into large caliber, it's like, oh, this is an expensive. You want to zero in on this ammo real quick.
Yeah.
It gets super expensive, and the good thing is once it's done, it's done. Like if that's how you want to do it. Reloading is obviously a super big advantage for that, but you really want to give yourself at least 3 or 4 different types. Give your gun a chance. See what's best for it, because there is going to be one that's going to be head and shoulders above the rest.
Now I'm questioning. I'm like, I certainly didn't do the proper elimination process on my 308. Yeah. I did the 3-round shot of a bunch of different ammos, one right after the other, and that's how I determined it. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And now I have a boatload of Federal Blue Box ammo, so I hope that's the one.
Yeah. You kind of sort of want to pick how far you go with that, because you might find one that's good enough.
I think it's good enough. Like for me, for the purposes of not doing like competition shooting, to do like vital targets of a deer shooting, it will suffice.
Yeah, I've shot some great groups with core lock, believe it or not. So it's not terrible. If you can shoot under an inch at 100 yards consistently, I'd be pretty happy for hunting for that sort of purposes.
Although 100 yards does not feel very far in the woods when you're looking at a deer that's like 400 to 500 yards away. You're like,
you start getting into like the 3, 4, 5. That's where you want to pick a better bullet, possibly with a better ballistic coefficient. Because those soft nose, like in the blue box and stuff, you'll see it's a copper jacket, and you'll see the lead coming out the front. It's different from bullet to bullet. Like it's not really that consistent. So there are higher BC bullets, ones with ballistic tips and things like that make it more consistent for those purposes. And you'll find if you track paper out to 500 yards, that's where you start to gain a bit of advantage with a better bullet.
One day 500 yards, Dan.
Yeah. You can do it. Your gun's capable of it.
I know my gun's capable of it. I am the limiting factor, the weakest link in the chain.
We all are. We all are. Like I still am. My gun, all my guns can shoot better than me, all of them. And it's
See,
still,
you're taking away my excuses here, man. Like I gotta have something. A good
yeah.
carpenter always blames his tools.
Oh, for sure. That's never more prevalent than in the shooting world. Guys will fiddle with their equipment and with their loads and things like that until the cows come home. But at the end of the day, trigger time and getting your fundamentals right is just, that's where you're going to get your biggest gains.
So I
Yeah.
know I could literally just ask you questions all night long and want to be mindful of the time. I've got some more and then I'm sure Justina has some more too, but maybe relatively quickly. One, like newer hunters, let's kind of say you're limiting to shooting 150-ish yards. Where are you zeroing your rifle to accurately be able to get out and then be able to accurately make those decisions?
I'll try to be quick on this one. There's a few concepts here, depending on how you have your stuff set up. Me personally, I would always zero my stuff at 100 yards. It depends on how you're getting your drop data. So whether you have a BDC reticle like Justina does, whether you use
Has the little notches. That's what you're wondering what that means.
it's built into your reticle for your particular round. Whether you use drop data on a card or something like that, or whether you're doing like basically just a max point blank. For a new shooter, let's say, and you don't expect over 150, 200 yards, it might be prudent to just do a point. And it just depends on your round as well too, how flat a shooting round is. A 308 is not a very flat shooting round, but let's say you had a little bit more flatter shooting round, I would probably still zero at 100 and just expect that if I just put it on the vitals, I'm going to hit a little bit low, maybe favor a little bit high if I know I'm kind of getting towards that 200 yards range. There's a school of thought as well too. If you can calculate your max point blank as well too, when it comes to, let's say, zeroing at 200 and then knowing if you're at 100, how low you'll be if you're over or whatever, sorry, high on the other side and low on the outside. And you can sort of do that calculation. I've never really hunted that way. My precision background kind of doesn't allow me to do that. I kind of have to know where my bullet is going to go. And so I use drop data. But for the new shooter, I would probably still suggest zeroing at 100 and just knowing that, and practice this as well too. Like go out on paper, like what we did with Justine as well too. Even if you don't have a BDC reticle, you have a simple duplex reticle, just range out 200, fire your, if you're zeroed at 100, that is, fire at 200, see how low you are. If it's acceptable to you, if you're half an inch low, if you're an inch and a half low or whatever, you know that. You just build that into you can favor a little bit high, or you can sort of build that into you could adjust your scope a little bit up. I wouldn't. I'd tend to zero at 100 and you know what you're doing. But if you're brand new, it's kind of up to you. It's a personal thing.
I think that's good advice. I think for the average person who is looking to get into, whether you're just shooting at the range or you are shooting to go hunting, 100 yards is like pretty standard.
It's a standard.
Yeah, pretty standard to know that your gun is accurate at that.
Yeah. And for the average centerfire hunting rifle, 200, if you're zeroed at 100, a 200-yard shot is only going to be an inch low, like generally speaking. Like it changes completely with your chambering, but it's going to be well in the vitals of most big game. So I wouldn't worry about it. A BDC reticle like Justina has can be very useful if it's matched to your round. Hers is pretty good out to about 300. I think it would be within half an inch kind of thing. So that's a good option. It's super easy to do for a new hunter, but yeah, like even if you're at 100, two is not going to be too much of an issue.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Drew, did you have other questions?
My last one, and I think I probably know the answer to it, but just are you doing a quick cleaning routine after every time you're out shooting? A full? What's your? How do you maintain again with the? I'm sure we can do and we will do a full podcast on cleaning and maintenance.
Yeah, that's that can be another can of worms as well too.
That's what I was saying. I was like, controversial, Drew.
So, yeah, great question. I don't clean a super lot, to be perfectly honest.
What?
I will.
This is one of
clean-
those things we're gonna have to edit out later, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess care and maintenance in the field is a little bit of a different thing. You know, making sure, when you're let's say going from a cold environment to a warm and it sweats, you don't have a stainless barrel, like just making sure the health of your barrel, if you that needed to happen, like you need to run some patches through to make sure it's going to be safe, kind of thing. That's one thing that's a little bit aside. As far as just cleaning from shooting, I will do a full deep clean, which is I consider a carbon and a copper clean, maybe every 300 to 400 rounds. It depends entirely on your rifle, and it also depends on the round you're shooting. So the monolithic copper bullets, the Barnes in particular, the TTSX and LRX, they will deposit more copper. The Hornady, I'm running the Hornady GMX at the moment. It's not too bad. It's like a gilded metal, so it's a little bit better. They still probably deposit a bit more copper than your average jacketed bullet. But as far as like just carbon and copper, I have never found an accuracy drop off under 500 rounds. Bench rest guys will probably argue with me about that. But as far as a field gun, yeah, I'd say 250, 300 rounds would be the most I would ever clean a gun.
Oh, good. I can stop cleaning my gun so frequently.
Yeah, it's
I feel
not.
like I was neglecting a child. Like I'm like, well,
I know.
I
I clean my gun way too much, man. It's probably needs to be a little dirtier.
And that's also separate from, let's say, like dirt and dust and grime and stuff from the field. Like that stuff I'll take care of. I'll clean all the dirt out of my bolt and things like that.
Yeah.
I'll oil it and things like that. But just as far as like barrel cleaning,
Patches and barrel.
yeah, like a proper barrel cleaning, it's not all that necessary all that often. Like, yeah, I've one of my comp guns I ran to like 800 rounds and it was still shooting tight groups. So
wow.
It's a relief.
It's not too bad. Semis are a bit different. They get dirtier quicker.
Yeah.
Semi shotguns, your semi 22s and stuff, they get a little bit dirtier. So I might do it a little bit sooner with that. But as far as a center fire, like business rifle, hunting or field gun kind of thing, yeah, don't worry about 250, 300 rounds.
Perfect. Wonderful.
That's like 100 years for most people. So.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, for the
that's
guys
true.
who only shoot 3 rounds a year.
That's true.
That's great.
If you're gonna put it away for the year, like if I'm not gonna touch it for 6 months or whatever, yeah, I'll probably run a couple of dry patches through it, but I won't do a full clean by any means.
Yeah. Okay, so to wrap up, we have a few rapid fire questions for you. So we need to know the critical mass question. Do you wear double socks or single socks when you go out hunting?
I will wear double socks. So I'll either
Hey.
do stock liners and a set of sort of like darn toughs or something like that if it's not too hot. So you
Sock
don't
liners.
Yeah,
Is
sock
that like
liners.
What's a sock
old
liner?
lady sock liners?
They're kind of old lady sock liners, yeah. But they stop you from getting blisters. They're pretty good. So you get that friction between the sock layers instead of your boots and your foot. So that and then I get cold quick. The cold gets to me really quick. So if it's cold, I'll wear 2 sets of merino, to be honest, and stuff them.
Sock liners and 2 sets of merino?
No, I'll probably just do like a medium weight and then a heavy weight sort of merino.
Fair. I think I've stretched my boots out to the point now where if I don't wear double socks, if I'm like slipping around in there, it's like ocean room worth of swimming in my boots now.
Yeah, I've winter boots, like some Danners that are purposefully a little bit bigger for that exact reason.
Yeah, definitely.
It's socks are the one thing. It's like it's not a huge additional expense. It's like go right to the top. Buy nice
so
merino.
worth it.
Like
you might as well.
You have to.
Yeah.
I cheaped out once and I didn't wear merino wool socks. I was just like, oh, I'll just wear like my sport socks or whatever. Blisters for days. It was the worst decision of my life. Always wear expensive socks.
Yeah, stay away from cotton.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the problem. Okay, and then we need to know, what is your favorite snack to bring with you in the field?
Good question. I'll usually have some deer or bear sausage, some sort of like dry sausage I'll take that keeps pretty good. Hard to go by the trail mix as well too. I'll just sort of do your average trail mix.
Do
with
you
the mangoes
eat
in it? I love that.
Oh, with the mango. I was like, do you eat the M&Ms out of the trail mix first?
No, I found one that's, it's got mangoes and coconut and some chocolate covered raisins too for a little bit of sweetness. So
Ooh, that is fancy trail mix.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Is that cheaping out on bullets, socks, or trail mix?
Or trail mix. Yeah, those are all very key pieces to have the best.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's it for me for rapid fire questions.
Yes, and I have about 150 more questions, but I know that we'll have to save those for another time. And this has been wildly valuable, so thank you so much.
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much, Dan.
I'm looking forward to the next time to the range and having a chance to put this into action.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg, but hopefully these are a few points that that can point in the right direction, and some other people as well too, and become better shooters, which means better, more effective, more ethical hunters. That's the idea.
Key. Yeah. And we will definitely have you back to chat more about all of the other things associated with this. We just barely scratched the surface of this. Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening wherever you are. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find us everywhere that podcasts and video podcasts are found.
And if you have any comments or reviews, please drop them down below. We will get back to you, or you can reach us at questions@entrypointhunting.com.
And if you happen to know somebody who you'd recommend we talk to, whether they're an expert, an amateur, or growing in the sport, be sure to tag them in the comments or shoot us a message with their info.
And until next time, stay hungry.
Stay hungry.
So
I'm gonna leave it recording for 1 second because I want to try something. I didn't want to try it during the show, but this had like a great flow. Nice. But I just want to try, because some of the other the podcasts that I watch, they'll have a different, like, basically it'll be, the focused conversation, and then as the next person talks, and just, if even just a debrief of it, just to see what that looks like, and then we can look at it afterwards. So I do have one question.
I was gonna try and do, when we were in studio here, to have like a camera on me and then a camera on Dan, and then have my big wide angle camera have the whole scene in it. And one day when I have a bigger table, we can have 3 people at the table, and then we could have cameras on everybody.
Just gotta watch the buy and sells and find that camera for you, or the table.
Yeah, this table was free. So if you can find me a slightly bigger table of this, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So Dan, one question. Australia, what was it like? Like when I moved to Germany and we did I went out and I tried to get in. I had one guy that he runs a trap line there, and he was a big hunter, and he was going to take me out, but I had to flee because of COVID. But what was that like? Because they're, I follow Green Tree and Seeing Bits, but it's different world.
Yeah, it is a different world. I spent about 15 years there, and did a bit of hunting as well too. Got into started my, I think I was pretty young when I went over. That was about 19 or so. So I started my long range, real center fire long range sort of career over there. But it was great. Red deer, fallow deer, lots of kangaroos, lots of hogs, things like that. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of space. It's a super dynamic, or like
Did
diverse
you shoot a
country.
Kangaroo?
Oh, many kangaroos.
What?
They're really tasty. They're really good.
They're just keeping the reaction cam up for this one.
Yeah. Australia is the only country in the world where you can eat both animals on their coat of arms. So
Oh
We've got
yeah.
an emu and a kangaroo, and they're both quite delicious. So
What?
yeah, not the big reds like you probably imagine. They're just the eastern grays, and they're
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
they're very tasty. You get them in the supermarkets too. Like
Really?
yeah,
Oh wow.
they're everywhere.
So what is kangaroo tasting like?
It's a lot like beef, leaner, I guess, than beef, but it looks and tastes a lot like beef. It has a little bit of its own taste, but it's quite a nice mild taste. It's
Hmm.
it's nice. Funny story. I came back here 3 years ago from Australia, I guess, and I heard that there's a kangaroo farm in Kelowna, and so
You
I was
can't shoot those
well,
ones, Dan.
I went up and I was like, "Oh, great! I haven't had kangaroo in ages. This is gonna be great." And I was like, they're like, "No, you pet them. You don't eat them." So
They're for friends,
Yeah.
not for food.
yeah, apparently, so can't eat the kangaroos here, but they are
So
delicious.
you showed up with the shopping cart and you were very confused when you got there,
Or
or
a
what?
shotgun.
Well, no, I didn't quite get all the way there, but that was the reaction from a lot of other people too.
Yeah.
Shock and horror. So yeah, they're
Just roll
they're
up to the
tasty.
front. You're like, so what's the per pound? Like, what are
Yeah,
we?
yeah. That's right. Yeah, can I get them pre-frozen or what? Like,
I like
Yeah.
mine in kangaroo patties,
Yeah.
and then half in meatballs.
no, they wouldn't do it. It's crazy.
Oh, that's too funny.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been wildly informative. Like it
Right?
just,
Don't you feel like a noob with your gun now?
100%. And I think that maybe we're the oddities, but I really do think that it's literally for everybody. You go out, you put the crossy bit on the shooty bit, and you keep pulling until you get closer
Your
and
bitty
closer to
bit?
it. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
all that I
It's-
did.
You're not the oddities. It's pretty common, and it's not. It's something that I enjoy working with people to try to make them better shooters, because I feel like it is such an important part of being a good hunter is to be a good shooter. And I've seen a lot of really good hunters make bad shots or miss great shots kind of thing because of simple things that just shouldn't have happened. So
I
it's,
know I said to Dan, Drew, that if I knew at the start of last hunting season what I know now, and if my gun was dialed in the way that it is now, I might have had 2 deer in the freezer
Yeah.
this year.
you never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you found 2 of them. That's a huge part. That's definitely a very hard part of it. I think if you were able to have got some support, either prone or just modified on your knee or just something,
Yeah.
you might have been a different
Totally.
story. So
The first one, 100%. Like if I had better confidence in my capacity to use my gun, it was a wide open shot. There was nothing blocking the way.
Okay.
I just, as a shooter, was like, I need to be super freaking close because I'm not good with my gun. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to make an unethical shot.
Yeah. Which
and
is
then
natural, and
yeah.
that's, and not having practice, that was probably a smart move. But
and then the
just-
second one was just like stupidity. We were
Yeah.
so close, literally reach out and like slap it.
Oh, wow. Crazy. Yeah.
But not patient enough to wait for the right shot. So
Yeah. I think I told you as well too, of all the shots I've taken on animals, probably 90% was from full prone.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, like you can almost always find a way to get full prone. There's a couple situations where you can't, like really tall grass or something like that, but if you can get prone, you're gonna make a good shot, because that's how you practice. Like that's the most stable way to practice, stable way to shoot, period.
Yeah, well, and it definitely feels better than it looks.
Yeah.
It looks like it would be an awkward thing to be doing, and I still, every time I see somebody shooting prone, I'm like, they look like they're having to like hold themselves up and stuff. And then even yesterday I was out and the guys that I was with were like, oh, we're gonna shoot off this tree stump, and I'm like, I'm gonna go lay in the snow over there.
Yeah.
And like it just immediately, as soon as you're in that position, you're like, yep, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is way better.
And it doesn't have
When
to be
it's-
like on the ground too. Like I've shot high prone off like a fallen tree, and I've taken my backpack and thrown it, so I'm like taking up that space in my chest or whatever, and I'm sort of on an angle, but I'm fully rested. The gun's rested. I have like control of everything, and you're gonna make a good shot.
Yeah. What were you gonna say, Drew?
Well, just like the interesting piece of the ranging shots in BC hunting or Okanagan hunting, it's like, yeah, like if you can see 60 yards, sometimes that's a real long pull you're looking for.
It can be like that. Yeah, for sure. Especially whitetail hunting. Mule deer hunting, you can get into a little bit longer sometimes. They're usually a bit higher and a bit clearer up.
And dumber. They'll just stand there for longer.
Yeah.
We do
and you
appreciate
usually
that.
get another chance too. If you spook them, they'll usually turn around. But yeah, mule deer hunting, elk hunting, that's where you can start to get into a little bit longer range stuff. And if you're confident, it can be a lot more effective. Your freezer will be a lot fuller.
Yeah, a lot fuller than the empty it is now.
Yeah. Bear too. They're usually up high.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, I hate to cut this short, but it's
No,
Chinese New Year's Eve, and I'm supposed to go to Chinese New Year's Eve dinner.
Oh, we had
I know
Chinese
my
food
mom
last
texted me this
night.
morning. She's like, "You coming for dinner?" And I was like, I have an interview that I booked weeks ago. Sorry, I'll be there after." She was like,
Well,
"That's okay."
I'm very glad that you ditched your mom for this. So
Yeah, me too. Me too. I learned a lot.
Yeah. No.
thank you so much.
No, absolutely. That was awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. And if there's anything else you guys sort of want me to do more deep dives on or focus on or whatever.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'll be
There
around.
will be deep dives into subtopics of this. Like I didn't even I didn't even ask.
We could do a whole podcast that's just you, like just an entire line of because there's so
this
much
is the
to
Dan
it.
show. It's the Dan series.
Well,
and
there's a lot.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't ask, and I'm gonna ask it right now because I can cut it back into it later. Is there like a call? Can we direct, like, can people pay you to take them out? Can we, like, is there something that we can give back to you? Because you've given away a ton for free. I'd happily hire you for a session to take me out. Once I do a couple sessions trying to just break the really bad habits. But is there any way that we can direct people to you? Any requests you have of the audience?
I don't know. I don't know that I'd want to charge people. I'm happy to teach people. If I can get a new shooter into the sport or get someone, make a breakthrough or whatever, that's super, makes me feel good too. Like that's payment enough. So
you buy them beers and food then if you want them to like spend some time with you and help you like hone in your gun to you can pay them in beer and food then,
like
and
beer
goodwill.
And
food. I'm putting it in the budget right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm happy. Awesome. I'm always happy to help. I had help from some pretty good teachers when I was young, and I really like getting people into it and
paying it forward.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate you're a real quality human with a ton of information. So thank you.
Appreciate that. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, Drew, and Dan's leaving us soon. He's moving to the island. So if you want human time to meet him in real life, you better make that happen.
How long do we got?
I'll be back and forth. So I'm gonna do the first sort of move probably in 2 or 3 weeks, but I'll be back and forth lots. I did all the center fire matches that I shoot are in and around here, so I'll be around. Yeah.
We'll keep you anchored here as much as we can.
Yeah. I got a good shooting buddy that I compete with too. He won't let me go too far.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome.
Okay. Awesome.
Justina, enjoy dinner. Thank you, Dan.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Pleasure to meet you, man. Thank you.
All right.